All right. Hi, everyone. How are we doing today? All right, awesome. Who here has heard of CISA, or the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency? All right, awesome. Who here has heard of Secure by Design? Okay, who wants to learn more? Awesome, you've come to the right place. My name is Lauren Zabierek. I am a senior advisor within the cybersecurity division at CISA. Okay, did anyone catch Director Jen Easterly's testimony in front of Congress back in February? Okay, let me just say this. No moment was as crystallizing for our agency as her testimony was. Let me read you a quote. The reality is, however, eradicating malicious Chinese activity, bolstering the resilience of critical infrastructure is all necessary but insufficient. While the PRC is a sophisticated cyber adversary, many of its methods to break into our critical infrastructure are not. They don't have to be. Why? Because we've made it easy for them. So what are we going to do about that? We're trying to change a $40 trillion industry with what we call Secure by Design. Here are the norms that we're up against, that we're trying to, whoops. Sorry about that. I don't know why it did that. We'll go back. It's all good. This is just ruining my presentation. I know, right? Okay. Okay, norms we have accepted. We have placed the burden of saying cyber safe on the people and the organizations that are least able. This clicker thing is going crazy. All right, you know what? Sorry about this, everyone. Okay, least able to understand the threat landscape, least able to respond with the right people and processes, and least able to afford the necessary technologies to go up against these adversaries. After a security incident, we blame the victim for not patching fast enough, we blame them for not deploying multi-factor authentication, and we blame the victim for not applying the very hard-to-find hardening guide, but not the vendor for shipping unsafe products. And we imply that the victim should have had a security operations center. So, what are we doing about it? Who here has read the National Cybersecurity Strategy? All right, okay. So the National Cybersecurity Strategy prescribes two fundamental shifts for our nation. One of those is to shift the burden of responsibility for security from the least equipped, as we just talked about, to the most capable of actually addressing those threats. And so Secure by Design is CISA's effort drawn directly from the National Cybersecurity Strategy to do that. And we actually just celebrated our first anniversary in late April. So what do I mean by shifting the responsibility? Customers of security products pay both hard and soft costs, such as buying security products, paying the single sign-on tax, paying for staff, paying for insurance, deploying hardening guides, both left and right of boom. Of course, if something happens, you're paying for things like your response to the incident, you're paying for IR firms, so incident response firms, and of course, lost executive productivity. What does that result in? Residual business risk. And of course, not every business can actually afford to pay those costs. And so that actually puts us in a national security delta. So what we're proposing is to shift these costs left to the manufacturers during the design stage before the product is actually built. All right, so why haven't we done this yet? Sounds good, right? Let's go back in time a little bit. In 1972, the US Air Force released this report that we call the Anderson Report. And in it, it said there's little chance that products can be made secure by retrofitting security products on afterwards. That was what, 54 years ago? 52 years ago. Sorry, I can't do math in public. Then, in 2007, a man named Steve Christie of MITRE published a document called The Unforgivable Vulnerabilities. And so you can see here this list of them, including things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection vulnerabilities. These are all things that we know how to actually fix before they are introduced into the product. And in the last couple of years, MITRE has also put out a list of its most stubborn weaknesses, the CWE Top 25. And you can see all of these weaknesses have potential mitigations there. This intentionally messy slide is to show you that we haven't made much progress since. We're still dealing with those very stubborn and unforgivable weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Product developers, companies have not made too much of an effort to actually put security into their product. So, Secure by Design, CISA's effort to really drive this shift, is really predicated on 3 principles. The first is that businesses should own the security outcomes of their customers. The second is that businesses should embrace radical transparency and accountability with their products. And that 3, leaders should lead from the top. They should build their organizational structure such that they can actually facilitate secure development practices. That just means making investments in their products, investments in their people, and the right tooling, things like that. You may have noticed these principles are really aimed at business leaders, not the developers. The business leaders are the ones that make the decisions for their businesses. And they can make these decisions to make security as a stated business goal. So what do we mean by secure by design? Technology products are built in such a way that protect against malicious actors gaining access to data and devices. Some examples of that include, again, it's a stated business goal. It's stated before the design kickoff of the product. It does require trade-offs. It can't be added later. Some examples include looking to eliminate entire classes of vulnerability before it's introduced to the product. Secure hardware foundations, software bills of material, and vulnerability disclosures with Safe Harbor. You may have also heard of secure by default. This means secure configurations out of the box. MFA pushes for all products and loosening guides instead of hardening guides, so it should come at the most secure configuration right out of the box. And those things should come without any added charges or new licenses required. And of course, default in every product. So you might see this, this diagram here with the cars. We're going to come back to that here in a minute. Some examples of secure by default include eliminating default passwords for customers, enabling single sign-on at no extra charge, high-quality audit logs at no extra charge, reducing that hardening guide, and of course, making the user experience as secure and easy to use as possible. All right, I mentioned the cars. Who here thinks that this is a monumental task? All right, I agree with you, but we're lucky because we have models. So I'm referencing here the automobile industry. In the 1950s and 60s, automobiles were manufactured for speed and style and not safety. Until the work of Ralph Nader and his book, Unsafe at Any Speed, and of course his congressional testimony, which then compelled Congress to act to create laws. But what this graph is showing is that because of those safety standards, even though the population has grown, the deaths per billion vehicle miles traveled has plummeted over the decades. And this is what we're asking for technology, not deaths obviously, but attacks and critical infrastructure outages. So, if there's one thing that I want you to take away, it's that before a safer car could be made, we had to believe in the idea of a safer car. And again, that's what we're asking with technology. And so that, in a nutshell, is what Secure by Design is. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. So the question is, what are the motivations for manufacturers to add this in? We are not a regulatory agency. Any sort of legislation that may happen outside of us, but really what companies should be looking for is to, again, take responsibility for their customers' security outcomes to protect the United States, which I know maybe isn't a profit center, but we believe that we can actually innovate on security and also differentiate on security and be secure to market and also secure by design. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. Really appreciate it.